Well, welcome back to another edition of the full 80 minutes on Show Me the Money Rugby League TV. Don't forget, if you aren't a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below and support the shows. It is 2025. Happy New Year. We are back. It is me, the game caller, and it's also the king, Mr. Craig, Show Me the Money Harrison. And for those people that are asking, where's Jimmy? Well, Jimmy's got a brand new job, I do believe, as a Uber Eats delivery driver. So Jimmy is somewhere around North Yorkshire delivering food and groceries.
True.
There might be a bit of truth in that. He likes driving, does our Jim Bob. Craig, good to be back. What shall we talk? It's all happening as we build, as we sort of come out of hibernation of winter, as we build towards what is going to be an exciting 2025 Rugby League season. We've got the Huddersfield Giants. They've announced that they're potentially leaving the John Smith Stadium. You speak to Ken, there's certainly a lot of interesting kind of points to this news, in that I kind of get the feeling Huddersfield have acknowledged, and certainly from a disappointing point of view, one of the main reasons they are leaving is because if they remain at the John Smith Stadium, they'll probably end up out of Super League because of, despite the John Smith Stadium being a very good facility, they are getting absolutely hammered on their IMG score for utilisation. So, for instance, they're averaging 4,000 fans in a 25,000, capacity stadium, so they are actually getting marked down, despite the John Smith Stadium, in my opinion, having more than adequate facilities. But he's looking to downsize effectively to keep Huddersfield in the Super League. But probably more importantly, when you look at the money what Ken has actually put into Huddersfield, he's probably, if you're going to say to Ken, what is your lasting legacy? We've mentioned, obviously, the great facilities for the players to train in, and obviously the junior and academy. But, I think this is probably Ken's kind of last roll of the dice, a new stadium, a lot smaller, something that Huddersfield can probably actually call home. And hopefully, with it being 7, 8, 9,000 versus 25, it'll be more attractive to fans, because, it must be very difficult for Richard Fewlis and Ken and the hard-working people of Huddersfield Giants to try and market the club when people who are new come and they turn up. And, I can only go from experience. A friend of mine who was at university a couple of years back at Huddersfield, no interest in rugby league whatsoever, prefers to go watch football, but went to a Huddersfield Giants game and just said there was
nothing.
There was 4,000 there, and that's someone outside the sport who is coming in for the first time, and first impressions do count a lot, as we know. We do make those sort of prejudicial opinions, and we base our future decisions and interactions around those first impressions. But yeah, it's sad really to see Huddersfield, despite Ken's investment on the field. Obviously, Simon Wolford, he had all the money.
Rick
Stone, he had all the money.
Nathan Brown,
he had all the money. Paul Anderson. So you kind of go backwards.
And then Ian
Watson. Yeah, there's been a lot of investment in there. And yes, I think it was 2013 they won the League Leaders Shield. But apart from that, a couple of Challenge Cup final defeats, they've not really performed on the field or given the people of Huddersfield probably a reason to come out and support them. But just your thoughts on that, Craig, because it is interesting, that the kind of main drive of this is, if Huddersfield are to become a Grade A club, they need a smaller stadium where their score's going to go up. At the minute, averaging 4,000 fans in a 25,000 capacity stadium is seeing them lose IMG points, which is dragging them down.
I think Ken's legacy has to be a new stadium. I've seen the new facility in the training, it's amazing. YMCA.
Yeah.
And I saw 200 kids playing on a thing last year, AstroTurf. It was amazing. Ken should be called the Ken Davy Stadium. That YMCA should be called the Ken Davy thing, if it's true that he's whatever. I think the new stadium should be called the Ken Davy Stadium. I think Ken's legacy in Huddersfield will not be to win a grand final. It won't be to win a Challenge Cup final. It will be to leave rugby league for the next 30 years in Huddersfield. Once he's bought his headspace into that, it's easy then. Once Ken's bought into realising he's never going to win Super League. Unfortunately, he's not going to win Super League. He might win a Challenge Cup. But could his legacy that he leaves rugby league in a great place in Huddersfield with a new stadium which is adequate for the fans, great facilities, and the youngsters can go and play rugby league on that pitch. Huddersfield has been one of the greatest growing areas ever for young players. I haven't got my list with me. You're probably talking, since I've done this job, the best players in the country, some in the world, have been from that area. For whatever reason, Dom Young, let's just start with Dom Young, that'd be, we've got a kid here who's earning 750,000 in Sydney Roosters. He's the England winger. He's a worldwide star. And he left Huddersfield within 3 years because they couldn't come to an agreement of 30-40 grand. I think Ken's legacy is going to have to be that one. Now he's got that, I think it's amazing. I think the sooner they get out of the stadium, the better. They've got a very tricky 12 months. Out of my respect for Richard Doulis, I won't say what I think will happen this year, but it's a tricky 12 months on the field.
Luke Robinson, new head coach. Clearly, we saw at the end of last season when he took over from Ian Watson in that sort of temporary caretaker role, you saw a lot of love. There's clearly a connection there between him and the players.
Luke, Andy Kelly and the lads have got Huddersfield breeding out of them. That's a great thing to have when you've got people in staff who actually love the club. That's massive for me. I'm a recruitment, that's my expertise. Well, I think I can do the other stuff, but the expertise would be on looking at their squad. Mick, I've got them. Unless something happens, where I'd have them would be right there with you, with what we've said before. You said the big five: Cass, Salford, Hull
FC,
and potentially Salford. If Salford lose the players, if they don't lose the players, I think Salford would be better than them. But I see Huddersfield right in the niche of that. And if they finish bottom, then the stadium won't matter, will it? We'll see you next year in the Championship, I think. I hope not. I think they've done that much good work. I think over the years, Huddersfield have been a brilliant advocate of the game. I think Richard Doulis and Ken and the staff there have been you know what? Have you ever read anything bad come out of Huddersfield in 15 years?
No.
The integrity of that club would be the best, wouldn't it? You think about every other club.
Yeah, there's
You've had the shit coming out of every club.
There's not been any sort of scandals or anything.
No scandals, no. So you think about that, is that you look and you think everything they've done with a bit of class. The big question's always been, Mick, what happens when Ken's not there? I think Ken's putting this in for when he's not there. And that's amazing. That's
a very good legacy, isn't it?
Know it.
That keeps Huddersfield going, whether professional in the Super League or semi-professional in the Championship.
Better than chasing titles, Mick. Honestly, better than chasing dreams. If he can leave a legacy of Huddersfield for rugby league to be played in Huddersfield the next 25 years with the facility, Ken's my hero anyway. You know what? Here's a weird one for you. I've never met Ken. And I've been in this game 16 years. Isn't it weird that
You've always dealt with Mr. Fulis.
I've always dealt with Richard, and I've never met Ken. And I think I shook hands with him once. And I'd love to tell him how much I admire him for what he's done for the game. I genuinely do think he's been one of the greatest things to happen to, Huddersfield. I don't think, without being disrespectful, probably don't appreciate, Mick, what they've had. You just said earlier on in the last show, you said, they need a benefactor like Matt at Wakey. Well, Huddersfield have had one for 15 years. Maybe longer.
I was just going to say, you look at Ken, and is there a worry that he ends up being a little bit like Seymour Curdie at Newcastle, like David Hughes at London, when you actually reflect on...
No legacy.
Obviously, the stadium is going to be the legacy, but I'm just thinking right here, right now, the millions, and we are talking millions, because Richard Fulis has told me you're probably talking a similar amount to what David had put in at London, what Ken's put into finance, effectively funding that club, because as we've found out from Simon Moran, if Warrington are having to put in between 1.5 and 2 million a year to keep Warrington at the level that they're spending, when they're getting treble the crowds that Huddersfield are getting, then you can clearly see there has been millions pounds worth of investment. But I just wonder, do you think that Ken probably looks back and thinks, well, I know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I do actually wonder if he'd actually think,
well, I don't think
have I had that actual return on that investment?
I don't think Ken's got no ego. I think
no, he hasn't.
When somebody's got an ego,
he does it because he loves it. Yeah.
A lot of them just make it about the Zen. I think Ken genuinely wants Huddersfield, and he earned some great money out of Huddersfield Town, and he's thought, well, I want to give it back. If you understand, because you get older with money, it's scary, I don't think I had a lot of brass at one time. Life goes on, and when you get older, I've noticed a lot of my friends who are getting older, and certainly my parents who works very hard independently to earn a few quid, and then mum's money went all on medical care. For dad, who had motor neurone, mum had dementia. I think my mum's bill had been 300,000, literally 4 or 5 years of full-time home care. She didn't want to go to a home that were her wishes. It's bizarre how the way it's all run now, Mick. I think rich people who get old and benefactors of people, they will put money back in, because the way the country's run, Mick, they take it off you anyway. They're taxing you to absolute everything you've got. So if you're leaving things now, you're going to leave it 7 years before. I looked into it with Mum. I said, Mum, this is a minefield. This is a minefield. So if my mum had a few million and she loves something, my mum used to give her money to a local football club and a local park. She'd give a bit back of her wages just to get a wage. She used to say, I think people will do this more and more, Mick, that, if you think of Ken's legacy and they kept that, I think that's going to be sold better. If you earn money out of a town, so you look at Paul Caddick. Paul Caddick's been a big, I'm sure, in Leeds. How long? 20 years now?
Oh, plus.
So Caddick's company's turned over 200 million, and Caddick's legacy will be Caddick Construction, which has been one of the biggest construction firms in the north of England for 25 years. Right. But also, he's related to that stadium. Mm-hmm. That stadium, really, the cricket and the rugby is Paul Caddick and what they did and the land. So there's a legacy involved. Let's hope Ken gets the right legacy. How many people have left rugby league? You've just said there, Kearney. You're thinking, what has happened at Newcastle? It's disastrous. He's gone and he pumped in 4 or 5 million quid. Will anyone mention Marwan again? We all mention him and smile, but Marwan's legacy wouldn't be great, would it? He'd be like, oh my God, no. You've just said there that the David Hughes, if it's true, 10, 12 million quid.
Oh no, 20 plus.
20 plus, yeah. And then you look at what legacy, he hasn't left a legacy.
No, yeah, he hasn't, because you're looking at London now, even though there's these rumours of Australian investment consortiums, the future is looking more uncertain.
He'd have more legacy at Salford than anybody. There was the ex-chairman, John.
I know you mean, yes, yeah.
You did it again, we haven't got your name, have you? We need to get you sharper.
The former Salford chairman?
Yeah. You'd have got this in seconds before, now you go...
No, I know
you're raving too much.
I can picture him, Craig,
So I think John would have...
he sold the club to Marwan.
He's held in a legacy of people's respect and what he did for the club. And when Carl Harrison were there, they got Super League and they did this. I think there's a lot of that. I'd like to think if you're pumping that many millions in, that they do respect you. I always thought I did a fantastic job at Doncaster. It were 18 months from 16 months start to finish, which is not a legacy, which is not anything, but I definitely put my heart and soul. I put more time into Doncaster than I did my company that I sold out for a lot of money. I put more time into Doncaster and more effort, and we did everything that you could possibly do. We gave it best 15 months, I thought, ever. 2 finals, Northern Rail final, promotion final, quarter final. We did everything we could. We got England International v Wales. We got Challenge Cup semi-final, which it was sensational. You sometimes go back and not one person dips their hat to you. In fact, you'll get smackheads or dickheads on social media. Oh yeah, you left us. No. The day I left, I signed a cheque for 58,000 quid just to cover the bill, And there's been 100 times better people than me doing it. Do you know what I mean? I even look at Jack Fulton. What legacy did he leave at Cass? Ian's his son's a gentleman. I love Ian. I've met Ian quite a few times. But you look at the Fultons at Cass should be revered for the next 20 years because they kept the club going.
Correct, yeah. There was probably that period, 2014, as Luke Gale always says, 2014-15 onwards, where you genuinely felt you're getting a return on all that investment. You know, I always remember that 2017 season where, you know, Dennis Olabona, Luke Gale, Reynolds. Is
it about the players, Mick?
You thought Cass were going to go on and win it, and it's a shame they didn't.
Well, they had the chairmanship for 20 odd years, and they've left it now. The new guys, you know, the new person's in. He's absolutely, you know, he's brilliant. I've had 3 or 4 great conversations with him. But they had 20 years, and I don't know what that legacy'd be. What would, you know, what's Michael Carter's at Wakey?
That's an interesting one, that, because a lot of people would probably say where they are now with Matt Ellis, they wouldn't have probably been there if Michael Carter hadn't have run that tight ship.
I know that.
If they had have done what Salford have done effectively and overspent and got in, you know, a financial mess.
And you know what? I went to the final, Wakey Toulouse, and Michael were there with his wife.
And rightly so, you know.
And they're beautiful. Do you know what? Talked to them, happy, and they were always kind and respectful with me. Always the respectful on that night with me. And I was looking at them and I was thinking, Jesus, she was working in the shop, she was working in the marketing. Yeah. The people forget they put their lives in. So yeah, let's go back to Ken and where we started off. Chris Casely at Bradford, is he still revered as being, or do they give him the boot?
No, I think Chris Casely.
Would he get a standing ovation if he went in?
Yeah, I think Chris Casely's legacy is very firmly
Peter Hood
intact. Well, Peter Hood still goes to games along with Andrew Bennett, and I think, you know, the tides of history on Peter Hood and Andrew Bennett probably, you know, I've been kind to them, even though there was obviously the mess which sort of kick-rolled and started what I would call a decade-long decline of the Bulls before what we now see is Bradford climbing out of it.
Did I ever tell you when Peter would come to see me? Have you ever told you this story?
When he tried to sell you the club?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, you can repeat it here for...
No, that's it. I always remember when you mentioned Peter Hood. Yeah, he came with Steve Mack, took me to the Laconda restaurant, and they got it, but you know, the figures and the committee.
Times were tough, Craig. Times were tough, and again, Peter Hood, his expertise was internet and databases, not running a rugby league club. There was a.
Do you know what you're about legacies, and I'll do it quickly. I think Neil Ludge will have a great legacy at OPR. I think when Neil finally walks away and he's out, I think if the fans have got any decency, which I know they have, the probably loyalist fans I've seen.
100%.
Neil Ludge should be brought on.
There should be a statue, yeah.
Humbling statue and saying, that is a chairman who's done everything. And then even now, when he doesn't want to put the amount of money he didn't want to keep putting in, he's willing to dilute his shares to get other people in who can. Mm-hmm. And I think he's done that. And I think, everything's my thing. I think Adams will be horrendous, won't it? I hope that's not Adam Teckes, but Adam going back to Hull and looking for that standing ovation.
Yeah, because he's presided over a decline. So
and whereas Kath Edrington, you know, she gets the boot. Kath,
yeah.
You know, the one interesting one will be when we're on it. Gary. Now, I think Gary should be given. Not about.
I think Gary's will be. Yeah.
It should be the greatest for me.
I think. Yeah.
He's been the greatest administrator in the world of rugby league and he has. There's no doubt. He's bloody 70. He's different now. Last 5-6 years. But Gary, from what he did, I wonder if the fans get the chance to say ta-ra to Gary. Now, I know this will happen between me and you. Next 18 months, Gary will definitely... There'll be changes. I think there's changes now, but they're not
public. Liam Blease is running it all.
Yeah, public. There's not public knowledge of what's happening. But Big G, I'll be interested because none of that happens without Gary. None of it. And I wonder if they do that, give him and Cat. I hope they do. I hope they gets the chance to bring him onto pitch. Because you know how many times he's done testimony. He's looked after every player and he's given them all the standing ovations. He's been on the mics. He's given them no one's ever given Gary hope, you know. And I hope before his 10-year finishes that he gets on the pitch in front of 20,000 and they say the one and only. Do you get me? You know,
and that should have happened for David. And when Ken obviously decides, you know, the time to move on, and whether Richard Fulis is already kind of running the day-to-day show there anyway.
But it shouldn't be. What I'm saying is, you look at the Fultons and Ian and his dad, and they love the club, their heart's there. Ian don't miss a game. His wife, his sister. But it shouldn't become a poison chalice, should it? Like,
no.
When you're passing that on, people are going, get rid quick because you're going to get blamed for this. It should still be. And we're very fickle as people, aren't we? One of the greatest chairmen in football history, Martin Edwards, Man United. Everyone remembers Martin Edwards, the Ferguson era and what he brought in. And it's interesting with rugby league. Simon Moran, you look at Simon Moran without Warrington, what happened?
Exactly. The move from Wilderspool, the investment.
He bought Wilderspool.
I know. It's strange because I was watching an old Warrington game at Wilderspool the other night, and when you think about Wilderspool, three-sided ground, and the investment at the Elliwell Jones. I know we're talking about him still putting in 2 million pounds yearly to fund where Warrington are, but I always remember early days of Super League, Warrington were always involved in a relegation scrap with Paris, with Oldham, with Castleford, with Huddersfield, Hull Sharks when they were called that, and his investment has taken to the next level. Yes, they have had success.
Mike Rush should be. Yeah. Would he get a standing ovation?
Yeah.
Ian Lenigan.
In the Wigan quarters, definitely.
He's gone now, hasn't he? Has he gone, Ian?
Yeah, Ian's
did he get the standing ovation with the family in the middle of the pitch?
From the Wigan fans, yes.
Got you.
Yes.
I do want one last question in your tenure in the thing. Who's been the best administrator of the sport in your tenure in rugby league, fan?
The overall sport?
Yeah.
I actually said this on a Facebook Live that I did, and I know that I will get stick for saying this, but when I look at rugby league and the RFL, and
we're building this up for, don't you?
No, hear me out here. Have I been sold down the river here? Well, let me just explain, and I don't care what people say. This is my honest, heartfelt opinion. I look at rugby league now, and we've all listened to the podcast with Eddie Hearn, where he's very blatantly said rugby league is a dying sport. He wanted to come in and take full control, like he has done with snooker, like he has done with darts, like he has done with boxing.
His dad, that's not
when we say Eddie Hearn, we mean the Hearns. Barry and Eddie, they come as a package. And I look at rugby league now in 2025, and I look and think, well,
Sorry, that's terrible.
No, it's all right. 2 shows in a row now.
Can you hear that off, Sam?
No, it's all right. Put it on silent.
I don't know how to do it.
It's on silent. You won't be bothered. But what I'm trying to say is, when I look at rugby league now in 20, we were building up then, and that's just. But no, when I look at rugby league in 2025, and I look at the commercial revenue in the sport, I look at what Sky are paying. I mean, darts are now paying more than rugby league. That speaks volumes to me. 5 years ago, rugby league was.
The runners and riders are Maurice Lindsay, who followed Brock Morris. Maurice Lindsay was the best chairman of the RFL.
Are you talking whilst I've been on...
Would you have been around when Maurice Lindsay were around?
No.
So when the great Wiggins... he left Wigan to go and do that?
No, Craig.
Who were the first administrator?
The sort of first administrator
Richard Lewis.
I dealt with, was probably at the end of Richard Lewis,
So Richard Lewis, Nigel Wood,
Ralph Strimmer. And now we're into... Ralph Strimmer?
Ralph Strimmer.
We're now into Tony Sutton. No, but what I'm trying to say, Craig, is I'm looking at the RFL now, and then I'm going backwards and looking at how it was, and I've got to be brutally honest, as I know we've used this analogy before, but, the Richard Lewis, even the Nigel Wood eras of the RFL, they weren't immune from constructive criticisms and fair criticisms about how they did their business, but we have gone from those warm, temperate waters of Tahiti, we're on the Titanic, full steam ahead into the iceberg, and that's quite reflective of how I feel, and I like to think I'm very positive about the sport. I love the sport of rugby league. as do you, Craig. We go to academy games. We try and go to as many games as possible and support as many things. And, we do this for the kindness of giving some genuine rugby league heartfelt content out there. But I look at where rugby league is now.
Are you doing all this just to say Nigel Wood?
No, I'm just saying, Craig. I'm saying, what I'm trying to say, Craig, is I'm looking at where rugby league is now and how it is administered and how it is run, and then I am looking backwards, and I'm not just looking at the individual, I'm looking at the team that was around the individual, and the fact that we've gone somehow from £40 million a year, what Sky were happy to pay because you had the Super 8, you had competitive rugby league, you had a different team playing every week, you had that jeopardy. We didn't operate in an IMG era where if you've got a big screen or LED boards, you're in the Super League, or as Huddersfield are finding out, because you've got a 25,000 capacity stadium and your utilisation score is 0.2, 0.3, you're dropping IMG points, so you're not going to be a grade A and you're potentially in the Championship. Things were so much better 6 or 7 years ago. And this is what I said on a Facebook Live. Yes, people will probably pour scorn and criticise. But
you haven't said it yet. You haven't said who.
I firmly...
This took 10 minutes to say one man.
The Nigel Wood era.
So you felt you had to explain all that because you thought the shit you'd get saying Nigel?
No, I'm looking at everything. The Nigel Wood era of the RFL, yes, I don't agree with some of the things that happened. We've had Michael Carter famously on this show, who openly admitted they went too far in wrestling control, full control. Don't forget, Craig, here we are in 2025 with the Super League clubs still having full control. All this realignment is bollocks. They still call the shots. RL Commercial, they've got Rodri, they brought their own man in. You know how the sport is currently run. It is to the detriment of the game rather than the betterment. And until you get somebody like a Peter Volandis figure,
yes,
Todd Greenberg, you get one of these well-proven Australians, somebody who can come in, get those clubs to give up those golden shares, as they're called, then the sport, sadly, is being held back by those clubs. And I fully know damn well that if Bradford were to go into Super League, and I can see people will be commenting now saying, well, if Bradford get into Super League, you'd change. I wouldn't change. My stance wouldn't change, but Bradford's stance would change because they would then have a golden share and they would then put up that shield of protectivism, which is what a lot of the Super League clubs are doing now.
One thing I'll give you, and thank you for
I personally thought the RFL, Craig, was one far more professional under Nigel Wood. In recent weeks, I will give you this. Craig, in recent weeks, and there's some good friends of mine at the RFL, and I'm not tarnishing you all with the bush. We've had the head of safeguarding, Kerrick, she's gone. Robert Hicks, suspended, pending investigation. There was the story in the paper about the RFL executive who's been selling Class A drugs to players and other people in the sport, pending an investigation. I'm just talking about professionalism here. And I know people will say, well, Mick, you did that famous F.U. Ralph Rimmer, F.U. Karen Morehouse video. And that will haunt me till the end of my days. I know people laugh and joke about it. No,
it's not funny. I don't think it's funny.
That wasn't a true reflection of me. And that, is something that I've got to deal with. And even now, in a very heated discussion with an RFL employee not so long ago, that actually come back up saying, well, you're lucky you should be banned, My argument was, well, Ralph and Karen had accepted my apology the day after it. But, I think it was poor of the RFL to drag that from the vault into now, just because I was making, in my opinion, a valid and fair point. But I personally think, Craig, the sport has fallen off a cliff.
I'll go back.
Since that Nigel Wood era.
I can remember as a kid, the great Maurice Lindsay, who probably would have parachuted one of the greatest era. He obviously had the Wigan team and then went on to run and you'd hear this. Maurice were a bit more pleated of Andy. My way.
Yeah, he did the
all
first.
the highway.
Maurice Lindsay did the first deal with Sky Sports.
It was a little angry, ex-bookmaker. So he had a little bit that what you're on about with Landy. I always thought with Richard Lewis, so I met on quite a few occasions, a gentleman, absolute gentleman, and he had the perfect thing. He had Nigel below him, but running the show. Mm-hmm. Nigel were doing all the deals. And Nigel's team would have been 10 of them behind him, and they were correct, all. And I agree with you. I agree with exactly what you said. He had a level of professionalism, especially when I thought Richard was the head of the thing, because Richard, there were no skeletons on Richard.
Correct.
They couldn't get him. Nigel,
Richard
they
was
could always get Nigel because they'd always say, "Oh, Nigel got it spot because of this. He got it spot." So I'm agreeing with you. Listen, one of the cleverest negotiators I have ever humanly seen is Nigel Wood. I had a chat with him at the game at Wakefield Toulouse, and we clashed a bit, and the people on the table were like listening to us and all stood aback. They were all like looking. John Keir were there, and me, Nigel. I don't see any weakness in Nigel. I love that. Nigel will give you some, and he'll educate you. Always be his way. He only thinks he's right, so you're not right. Once he said he's big Nigel, don't matter what you say, you're right. Do you get me?
No, I understand.
I'm never going to allow that to happen in my company. You've got to even the score. You've got to be right on some things, wrong on some things, accept a little bit. But I certainly agree with you. I think Nigel would have been one of the that team, that Richard Lewis, Nigel, Karen, Karen Morehouse, and somebody else, Emma. There was Emma
Rosewall.
There was a team of them.
Obviously, Ralph Rimmer was below.
And then there was the girl who went to tennis.
Sally Bolton, who run that successful 2013 World Cup with Nigel Wood at the helm.
That was the peak. That was the peak organisation of all that. Sally Bolton's at the LTA now with Wimbledon. She was giving the Wimbledon crown. So that, as I see it, that was the perfect administration team who had it in rugby league. And I think it's impossible to get that again.
I tend to agree, Craig. And I know Nigel Wood is the co-owner, chairman of the Bradford Bulls, and people say, Mick, you're already saying nice things, But I just go back to the Super 8s concept. It's back this year for Championship and League One. The Super League clubs, they got rid of it because there was too much jeopardy. The Championship clubs, they were equalising, and it's just an absolute shame. There'd be nobody in history has suffered more for his opinions. There might be the one on the cross many years ago. But Michael Gledel, I'll give you your due. You've been the one how anybody could ever say to you doing ways when I've never seen a kid suffer from giving opinions in this sport like you have. And the amount of shit. It comes from the art, Craig.
Well, I'd like to give you some toffee there.
I'd like to think.
I've never known anybody ever and I've got mates in every sphere in this country. I've never known anybody suffer as much personal shit as you for giving an opinion. A lot of people wouldn't dare be in your shoes, Mick. That's the point. They wouldn't dare be in your shoes.
It's fine, Craig. I will always, heart on the sleeve, speak from the heart. I would like to think all those years ago, this is like the 6th or 7th year the full 80 minutes has been going. It just feels like yesterday we were back outside Ellen Road and, we're the subway, above the subway and, enjoying the guests that we had on, and hopefully, touch wood, we're going to get guests.
Yeah, we'll do the Gailey, Danny, and McShane.
We do need to try and get guests.
Yeah, we do,
and go back to our roots, which is giving the players a voice. But I'd like to think that I'm going over old ground a little bit, but I called the split for what it was, a power grab, and it would be disastrous for rugby league. And lo and behold, proven right. The Elston appointment again, absolute madness. All what happened with Robert Elston was he was being controlled by your Ian Lenahans, your Simon Morans, your Eamon McManuses, and you just ended up duplicating the salaries and wages which were already on the RFL side. So COVID comes along. Guess what? The RFL's the governing body. It's Ralph Rimmer and Simon Johnson who were getting those grants, not the Super League clubs under Elston. They were absolutely paralysed. And it kind of showed... COVID showed what it was. And I still go back to 2018. And, you know, I hope I'm not boring people, but, you know, I'm probably said this about 20,000 times now, but that original press conference where you've got Ian Lennon saying, we are taking back control of Rugby League. Craig, we feared it at the time. There was no strategy. There was no plan. And it says it all when you've got Lenihan, Moran, and then Roberts kind of sidelined at the side. That picture, even now when you look at it, it tells you everything you need to know.
What I didn't like about what they did is when they all went wrong, they never took their hats off and admitted it. When Ralph got the money and they got spanked and admitted that the Elston thing were a catastrophe, they never apologised to the sport. They should have all said, we got it wrong. We'll cop it right on the thing. We've absolutely done the worst move for Rugby League. They got away with going back behind the doors and say, power's back with Ralph. Thanks for loan. You know, listen, all good, but nice to be back.